I am so excited to be here with you today, especially on such a special episode. This is wrapping up our first season of the Radiant Womanhood podcast. It's been an incredible 24 episodes with you, an incredible first season. We are going to be back in the fall for season 2. Wow. But with all of that said, this episode is actually kind of a hard one for me to record. And not because it's wrapping up the season, but because it feels super vulnerable to me right now. It's something that I'm in the middle of walking through. And even in that, I do know the one thing that is needed in our lives when things feel overwhelming or chaotic, or maybe even like we've lost our creativity. I don't have all of the answers, but this right here is something, a path that I've walked before. And that's just what I'm sharing with you, what I'm walking through right now. My goal is to always be open, always be honest, share my journey with you. And in that, my hope is that even if it helps one other person, if there's someone else walking through what I am and this helps them, it is worth it. So it's worth it to share it. It's worth it to be vulnerable, even if it's a hard one. And with that said, I'm willing to bet that you are probably or possibly a multitasker just like me, which I will say we won't fully dive into that word on this episode right now. That's not what this one is about. But side note, let's just sidebar for a second. True multitasking doesn't really exist. Most of the things you do, you have to think about, and your brain can truly focus on one thing at a time. But with that said, there are some things that you can do while you're listening. So you might be out for a walk right now. That's when I like to listen to podcasts or books. You might be driving or doing the dishes. So a little bit of multitasking in there. But let me ask you this question. When was the last time you took a break? And I don't mean a a break where you check emails and do work things. You make lists or check off lists or record content or write content just in another location or in a different setting. Because, friend, that is what I've become really good at. I'll write in the car. I'll edit on the plane. I'll take a quote unquote a few minutes to finish up something while my family and we're at the cabin, or we go for a week to unwind and fill the time up with updates and cleaning and projects, which also is partially fun for me. That is something I really do enjoy, and it's needed. But all of that to say, many times my breaks, or what I try to schedule as breaks, aren't true breaks. And that is why this episode is so dear to my heart. And I feel like it's so, so, so needed and important for all of us, especially if you're like me. Many times with that twinge of guilt for sitting down to do nothing. But the importance, the art of, the science behind learning how to do nothing on purpose, that's important. We've recently been making over our backyard. So this is kind of a funny story. And just the other day, yesterday maybe, I don't even remember what day, our backyard is becoming such an oasis and we love it. Our family can spend so much time out there. I love reading out there. I do love relaxing in the sun or in the pool or even working out. We've set up an area for that, hot tub, all that. But there are many times when I go out there, and that's just what happened yesterday, instead of relaxing or taking a true break, even after I'd been working and it's one thing to the next, the next all day, go out there to take a break or be present, I get caught up in all the things. And so then I got in the pool. My intention was to relax, but I'd been so wound that I couldn't unwind at that moment. So then as I was in the pool, I noticed little bits of debris, just normal stuff that accumulates. So I was busy waving my arms all through the pool, probably looking like a crazy person, but I was just trying to gather the debris and push it towards the filter. Chris gets in the pool and he just comes up slowly behind me and hugs me from behind, holding my arms still, pulled me back against him. Just breathe, he said, just breathe. And so we did together. We did a little bit of box breathing to slow everything down, to help me unwind. But why am I like this sometimes? Why can't I just float there? Why can't I just sit there? Why can't I just take those moments sometimes and do nothing? And I have a feeling that that's you. feeling stressed, overwhelmed, maybe burnout. Maybe you're always the last one on your list and never really get to the end of that list. So you never really get to yourself. Feeling guilty when you're not doing something, when your hands aren't doing something, or hold on, I'm going to sit down, but I'm doing something. I'm looking up something. I'm researching something. I'm writing my list, or just not able to unwind from being wound. Many times when things already feel overwhelming, or like I need to figure out something out, I turn to this kind of innate belief that if I just work a little bit harder, then it will go well, or then it will work out. And for me, I can also tend to be such an emotional person, but yet I don't always release those emotions. I'll hold strength for the people around me, the friends around me, the people that are leaning on me. I'll hold a safe space for others, but not necessarily for myself. So, something I've been feeling lately is burnout. This is where I'm getting vulnerable. It's hard to share. I have made huge strides in working to heal my hormones, work on that, in even hiring others to take some of the work burden off of my shoulders, in placing boundaries for family time. But I also haven't been great at true rest. In fact, for me, when I start to feel overwhelmed, I usually turn to more busyness, more cleaning. I know, seriously, that might be a strange one. Maybe you're like me, but it's true. You will find me like rage cleaning or hurry cleaning. Sometimes it's more like brainstorming to try and hack it or figure it all out, or allowing myself to get stuck in this cycle of a functional freeze state. And this time around, I've found myself in various stages of burnout before, which is why I mentioned, I've walked this path a little bit before. And at this moment, I feel like it's stemming a little bit from emotional burnout. Like our family has been walking through so many things, and even just like my firstborn graduating and enlisting in the army, and like some different family changes like that, birthdays like back to back to back, and different things where it's like, okay, these kids are grown. Like all of these things emotional are happening at the same time of the busyness of business and the ending of a school year and planning these things and realizing that our time is limited with our little ones and all of these. So it's this emotional burnout. And so I want to share a couple of things that I'm doing right now to work through this burnout. And for one is to acknowledge the feelings that I'm feeling. Usually I'll try and blow through the feelings or work around them or work my way out of that feeling, out of feeling them, or even add chaos to the mix so that I stop feeling whatever it is. But currently I'm deciding to sit with them. We kind of just talked about this in one of the recent episodes about sitting with those feelings or asking questions first to explore what is it that those feelings are trying to tell me. It's usually for something. And then I can move from there. Going through the questions of what is it that lights me up? What do I wake up excited about? What am I, the things that I'm looking forward to, or what makes me smile? Or maybe even what are the things that I'm dreading? What are the things that I'm thinking about? And kind of learning to think about what I'm thinking about. Explore those feelings. And then leaning into the power of the pause, or the art of nothing. And it really is an art, because just like I said, I'm not the type of person that likes doing nothing. Doing nothing is such a weird feeling for me. And I think if you're listening to this, that you're probably at least somewhat the same way. You're always looking to grow, or you're looking to do something, or to achieve, or to learn something. And that is great. But you also need the space and the time to breathe, the space and the time for a break. And I want you to think of your device, your phone or your computer. And when it's always on, or like my computer right now with about 30 different tabs open at the same time, which seriously drives Chris crazy when he sees it. But okay, like I have multiple things going on and in process, and I don't want to close out of them. But when things begin to overheat or slow down, which doesn't happen that often, but there are times that it does, or if something isn't opening or it's not saving right, or if the device itself dies, what do? We turn it off. We power it down. We plug it in and recharge it. Everyone and everything needs space, breathing space. And the beauty of this is that it's intentional. There's an intentional moment to power down or unplug, or in some cases, plug in and recharge, where you restore your energy, you restore your creativity, you interrupt the chaos and breathe through the stress, just like Chris came up behind me. Just breathe. This was a lesson that Juliet Funk learned and shared about in her book, A Minute to Think, which is a book that I highly recommend. And in her story, she details this lesson during a family vacation where she tried to build a fire. She had been given a lesson on how to build a fire. That's what you need. You need paper and logs, and she had fire starters, all this stuff. So she piled it all up together, got her boys involved, and they stacked up this whole thing like it was going to be an incredible fire. But no matter how many matches she struck and threw in there, the fire wouldn't catch. And then it finally hit her, or I think it was her husband that came in and showed, but she had packed everything so tightly, all of the things, all of the paper, the logs, all the stuff, the kindling, it was all there. All the things that were necessary and needed for an incredible fire were there, except for space. Everything was so tight that oxygen couldn't circulate. The fire had no room to breathe. And our daily lives often resemble that author's fire. We cram our schedules with endless tasks and to-do lists and leave little to no room for breathing, for oxygen, for the flames of our own potential to even ignite, because it's just crammed. There's no room for actual growth or creativity or intentional thought. Just kind of this hamster wheel of life, of chaos, of doing, but without intention or without power. That fire doesn't really catch because all of these things are here, crammed in, except for space, except for room to breathe, except for a break. So really, the key message here is a simple one. This is the one thing that we really need, is the space to think, the time to breathe. A lot of times, instead of thinking, we're just constantly doing. From the moment our alarms jolt us awake and we jump out of bed, our days are just a blur with commuting, with emails, with meetings, with texts and phone calls and family responsibilities and doing and doing and doing. And by the time we collapse into bed, we often wonder, did I even really achieve anything today? Anything of value? And so I want to ask this, if this resonates with you, then you've uncovered this uncomfortable but vital truth about you and maybe where you're at in your life right now. Being busy and being productive are not the same. In fact, being too busy can actually smother that productivity. It can smother that creativity. It's all of the kindling and all the things for an incredible fire, but without the oxygen for it to breathe, for it to grow, for it to really have life. And this is what leads to burnout. So what I want you to do today is take a step back. Give yourself permission to breathe. An intentional break might be just the thing, just what you need to reignite your fire and truly lean into and achieve your potential. I know that you have it in you. I know that you have all of those things that you need. And maybe the one thing that you're lacking right now at this moment for that creativity to flourish and for that potential to flourish and for that fire inside of you to really take off is just that space to breathe and that space to think. Or you're not even allowing yourself the time to just breathe, or not even allowing yourself that minute to think. And with all that said, and this is not the reason, but first I just want to reiterate that, please, friend, give yourself permission to breathe. Give yourself permission for a break. And like I said, the timing couldn't be more perfect because we are wrapping up, like I mentioned, our first and very successful season of the Radiant Womanhood podcast, which is successful in part to you from sharing, from commenting on different social platforms, from sending this podcast or sending different episodes to your friends. And so I want to ask you to do that. We are going to be back in the fall with season 2, and we already have some amazing episodes lined up for you that I am excited about. If you haven't listened already, we have 24 incredible episodes for you to go back through, to listen to dive into, to really apply to your life and to share. So friend, please, please, please share. Send the Radiant Womanhood podcast to someone you know and take your break. Remember to give yourself permission to breathe, to have a moment to think, and also stay radiant.